Hello, my name is Jennifer Baer. This is my performance-based project for EDU 513, Models of Teaching. For my performance-based project, I will be utilizing the Gradual Release of Responsibility model. My lesson is to teach third grade math students about the concept of time and telling time to the minute using both analog and digital clocks. I will employ the following teaching strategies in my lesson: setting objectives and providing feedback, cooperative learning, homework and practice, and reinforcing effort and providing recognition. I will also utilize these additional teaching strategies: identifying similarities and differences, and non-linguistic representations. The Gradual Release of Responsibility model, or scaffolded instruction, is broadly recognized as a successful approach for moving classroom instruction from teacher-centered whole group delivery to student-centered collaboration and independent practice. Sometimes referred to as I do it, we do it, you do it, this model proposes a plan of instruction that includes demonstration, prompts, and practice. As the student acquires the new information and skills, the responsibility of learning shifts from teacher-directed instruction to student processing activities. In the we do it phase, the teacher continues to model, question, prompt, and cue students. But as students move into the you do phase, they rely more on themselves and less on the teacher to complete the learning task. Here is a gradual release of responsibility lesson planning template. In this template, teachers are able to find an excellent guide for guiding the creation of their particular lesson. Each section is clearly marked: I do it, we do it, you do it, and under each particular section, input, modeling, guided practice, collaboration, and independent practice, there are a series of questions to help guide teachers in their creation of their lessons. As you can see, in each one of those sections, the input, the modeling, the guided practice, and the collaboration and independent practice, the teacher's section gets smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. The student section gets larger and larger and larger and larger. That shows how the gradual release of responsibility takes place over the course of the lesson. This was also an excellent planning template because it does provide a section for you to include your instructional context, your content and resources, as well as a section where you can list the independent practice and application. Using this lesson planning template, I was able to create an actual lesson plan for my gradual release of responsibility lesson on time. In each one of the sections, I was able to use the questions from the planning template to help guide the creation of my lesson. I also was able to include instructional content and resources for my lesson, as well as practice and application with things I would do in class, as well as what I would assign for homework, as well as an application and assessment section to show what I would show and use for students as I continue to assess them beyond the completion of this lesson. My lesson will include several different teaching strategies. The first of those strategies is setting objectives and providing feedback. The objective for this particular lesson will be students will be able to tell time to the minute on an analog clock. Students will be provided with a clear objective as I establish goals and a purpose for the lesson. I will provide feedback throughout the lesson, helping to reinforce concepts and provide guidance throughout the lesson. As I am setting my objectives, I will provide pictures of analog clocks to show students what is meant by an analog clock. I will also identify the minutes as shown on an analog clock and the numbers used to identify the quarter hour and 5 minutes. During the direct instruction, I will utilize another teaching strategy, nonlinguistic representations. I will show this in the form of pictures of clocks and actual examples of analog and digital clocks. Students will also be provided with their own plastic analog clock for use during this lesson. This is an example of what an analog clock would look like that they would be using in the classroom. During direct instruction, students will be asked to identify a clock, both digital and analog, examples of time and situations when you would use a clock. They would also be asked to identify the similarities and differences of analog and digital clocks using a Venn diagram. The Venn diagram shown here is very similar to what I would use with my students. To the left would be the characteristics of digital clocks. To the right would be characteristics of analog clocks, and where the two circles overlap would be what the two have in common. This would help show students the similarities and differences between digital and analog clocks. Another teaching strategy I would use is cooperative learning groups. Students will work in groups of 2. They will use plastic analog clocks, and they will also take turns identifying analog times to the minute on their clocks. Students will use a worksheet as a guide, but they will also have the opportunity to make up their own times for their partners. Another teaching strategy I would use is homework and practice. In class, for practice, students will work independently on a worksheet using their clock to identify times to the minute. They will identify times on given clocks. They will draw hour and minute hands on pictures of blank clocks, and they will also write the time on a digital clock. I will provide examples and guidance on how to complete the worksheet, and then allow students time to work on the worksheet as I walk around to provide feedback and guidance. Students will then come together as a large group and play an around the world game utilizing pictures of analog and digital clocks. For homework, students will be asked to complete a worksheet in which they go around their home or search the internet with a parent to find actual clocks or pictures of clocks. They will need to identify the time on at least 3 different digital clocks and 3 different analog clocks. They will also be drawing 3 different pictures of analog and digital clocks and identifying the time on each of those. Parents will be asked to sign off on this assignment. The final teaching strategy I would employ is reinforcing effort and providing recognition. I will reinforce efforts throughout the lesson and activities with verbal praise and comments. Students' efforts will also be recognized by allowing students to each show a piece of their work to the class. I will also comment on student homework and address student efforts individually. In summary, the gradual release of responsibility provides for the gradual release of the learning responsibility from the teacher to the student. In the I Do It section, there are lessons, lectures, and demonstrations given by the teacher. In the We Do It section, there is guided instruction as well as class discussions related to the particular lesson. You Do It Together allows for group projects and collaboration. Finally, You Do It Alone calls for students to work independently as well as to answer problems on the related topic. Here is a list of references I used for my presentation today. I gathered information from the 3 websites listed as well as the textbook listed there. Additional resources for students. These are a list of websites for practicing the concept of time. Thank you for listening to my presentation. I hope that soon you too will be able to employ the gradual release of responsibility teaching model in your classroom. Thank you.